Hello humans, I'm Yo Schiller. If you keep up to date with internet memes and fads, then chances are you might have come across this picture. This picture shows a rather simplistic character with the words, "Local man saves anime," printed along the top. But who is this character? Well, that would be Saitama. This is a guy who is just a hero for fun. But what does the whole saves anime thing mean in this picture? Well, it's basically just the internet's way of conveying how a show known as One Punch Man was one of the best pieces of entertainment in 2015. What if I told you that one of the best shows in 2015 was a show about superheroes? What if I told you that one of the best shows of 2015 was about a bald guy with a cape? What if I told you that one of the best shows of 2015 was based on a Japanese webcomic that had a simple plot and a simple art style? One Punch Man is a show that you'd think would be doing everything incorrectly, but in reality, it's actually doing everything correctly. But what made this show so special? How could this random show come out of nowhere and become such a big hit? How did this show gain popularity and critical acclaim so quickly? How could this show possibly save anime? Well, that's the focus of today's video. In this video, I shall attempt to discuss why this show is so popular and so successful, and I shall attempt to convey why the show is so freaking good. Now, this isn't a review or a critique of the show. This is merely a video that will highlight some of the great qualities of the series, and I'll try my best not to give away any major spoilers. Also, copyright is tough to deal with on YouTube, so I'll have to make this video using a bunch of pictures and very minimal clips of the show in order to demonstrate my point. It should also be noted that I'm not a very big anime watcher either. I mean, yeah, I watched Pokemon, and I still watch Pokemon, and I love Japanese animation, but I'm definitely not a die-hard anime fan. I know plenty of people that absolutely love anime, and I've done my research on anime, and I'm not really the type of guy that gets super into it. I appreciate it, but I'm not a huge anime fan. Though, with that said, I think that quality about me may give me some better insight as to why One Punch Man is such a brilliant series. Before I dive on into the One Punch Man anime, please allow me to discuss a little bit of the series' history. The One Punch Man anime is actually based on a manga by the same name. It's almost a word-for-word action sequence to action sequence replica. However, the manga is actually based on a webcomic made by a man simply known as the name One. This was a guy who drew using a very simple art style, but he told stories that were simple on the surface, but rather complex deep down. One Punch Man tells the story of a man named Saitama. Saitama is a hero just for fun. He likes saving people as a hobby. After years of intense training, he becomes so strong that he can take out any opponent with just one punch. However, the problem is that he's gotten so powerful that nobody really poses a challenge to him anymore, and being a hero no longer has become fun for him. That sounds like a simple enough premise, right? But how do you make an entire webcomic and manga and anime and whatever revolving around that simple idea? Well, how about this? Let me tell you what One Punch Man doesn't do in comparison to other anime and other mangas. Right off the bat, this is a show that isn't about a guy trying to get stronger. There are plenty of shows about a character trying to grow stronger and break his or her limits, and truth be told, a lot of those shows are quite successful. A lot of popular characters in modern culture have that characteristic, and they're very likable. With One Punch Man, we first see Saitama as a guy who has no limits or restrictions. Now, it's also not uncommon to have a character that's so powerful to where nobody poses a threat to him or her. With those characters, the plot usually centers around the idea of knowing when to use certain powers and whether or not it's right to be that strong. The focus of One Punch Man is completely different. It's more about just what it's like to be a guy who has no limits. In addition to this, One Punch Man breaks a lot of other traditional stereotypes as well. While the show features a variety of different monsters with heavy Japanese influence, the show is still able to have its own identity. There are plenty of shows, especially today, that try to appeal to a younger audience by having cute girls and fan service and all this other stuff that really doesn't make a show good. It's not necessarily bad to do that, as it definitely brings in viewers, but so many shows are doing it nowadays that anime has gotten kinda stale in recent times. One Punch Man offers a breath of fresh air. The settings are constantly on the move, and the show focuses on characters of several different ages with several different personalities. We're not subjected to flirty romance, or bullies, or other overused archetypes. The overall simplicity of the show allows it to really stand out amongst other popular anime. The show is certainly silly, and it does follow certain tropes of anime, but it's like a different type of silliness. I don't know, it's One Punch Man. Rather than having a comic relief character, or rather than having some character that's just intended to be funny, the humor of the show comes out of the ridiculous situations that come when you have a guy who has no limits. Furthermore, in today's society, it's actually quite common for shows and comics to teach some pretty philosophical and deep ideas. The way that these productions are able to pull off this type of stuff is because viewers initially watch these things for simple entertainment. But by the time a viewer is done watching these forms of entertainment, a viewer can feel enlightened, having known that they watched something that was more than just simple entertainment. People get invested into entertainment, and they can come out with a very different view on very simple things. Some shows and movies do this intentionally, and others do it unintentionally. Regardless of the intention though, many productions can pull off this type of thing when you least expect it. Some of the most simple and silly shows of our time can be really heartwarming and touching when they need to be, and that's the result of having great characters and great storytelling with great people working on the production team. On the flip side, many productions try to pull this type of thing off, where they want to seem like they're philosophical and meaningful, and in the end they just kind of come off as a waste of time. These productions feel like they want to seem like they know what they're doing, but in the end they really end up not knowing what they're doing at all. One Punch Man is a really silly idea, and it essentially starts off as mindless violence and simple entertainment. But as the story progresses, some deeper ideas are explored, and plenty of engaging and interesting characters appear. This results in One Punch Man discussing ideas that you probably didn't even think of in the past. Now, at the end of the day, One Punch Man is still about a guy with the ability to destroy everything with just one punch. But it's the characters that he meets and the way that he reacts to them that sets up this premise to be something unique and thought-provoking. Now, before I go on and talk about the story of One Punch Man and how it's so brilliant, let me talk about narrative storytelling. Generally speaking, there are 4 main types of conflicts that can be told in a story. These are classified as man versus man society, man versus nature, and man versus self. Man versus man is the type of story in which someone must battle an individual that is equal to or higher than his or her own strength. Man versus society is generally a more complex story that focuses on somebody trying to fight something that is wrong with our world. However, these stories can also tell the everyday life of somebody struggling through tough living conditions. All in all, it's a type of story that doesn't have one specific villain or antagonist. Man vs. nature stories usually focus on survival stories, though they can also focus on a protagonist taking on some force of nature, or force of change. And last but not least, man vs. self stories usually focus on one's inner turmoil. These are stories in which somebody wishes to better himself or herself and achieve some sort of personal goal. These stories usually don't have an antagonist, it's just the main character trying to fight against his or her own thoughts. Most popular films and works of literature usually focus on these conflicts in great detail. Some combine these conflicts to tell some sort of grand story, while others might just focus on one conflict from beginning to end. One Punch Man is able to alternate between all 4 of these conflicts. Thanks to having a great cast of characters and a fun story, these conflicts never really feel unwelcome or overbearing. Instead, these conflicts act as the struggles for our protagonist. Saitama constantly fights all of these monsters and forces of nature throughout the show, but at the same time, he also has to deal with his own personal struggles. So One Punch Man contrasts a lot of other anime because the goal isn't to become stronger than an enemy or a rival. The goal isn't to oppose society's standards. The goal isn't to withstand disastrous forms of nature. The goal isn't to break a personal limit or achieve some sort of personal goal. The goal of the show is, mostly, just for Saitama to live with the fact that he is unbeatable. As previously mentioned, Saitama is a guy that just likes being a hero for fun, but he only has fun if there's some sort of challenge or reward involved. And when neither of those things are present, he's just bored. Saitama will just win any battle that he has without breaking a sweat, and that's not interesting to him. And technically, that shouldn't even be interesting to us. Of course, this isn't the only idea that One Punch Man has. I did mention that the show may sound like that it could be boring, right? What's so fun about a character that's that strong? I mean, you know he's gonna win every single battle that he has. The best characters are generally the ones that have something to lose, something to fear. When a character is able to lose or be defeated, that character becomes much more identifiable and interesting. Well, with One Punch Man, you know that these things aren't gonna be climactic or intense, they'll be quick, so why even watch the show? How is Saitama even remotely interesting if every battle ends in a matter of seconds? How is Saitama even remotely interesting when he doesn't have anything to strive for? Well, as the show progresses, a character named Genos comes into the picture. Genos is a cyborg that has the ability to utilize firepower and other various forms of machinery. He is a skilled fighter with deadly power. However, the problem with him is that even though he is incredibly skilled and incredibly powerful, he, more or less, has also reached his full potential. But even then, whenever Genos does try his best to fight, he sometimes just isn't good enough. Sometimes he can try his best and still not be good enough to take someone down. Similarly to Saitama, Genos just can't get much stronger, but in contrast, Genos is weaker than Saitama. Saitama can take everyone out with one punch. Genos can still struggle when he fights. Genos is definitely a skilled and noteworthy fighter, but when compared to Saitama, his skills are significantly low. So when Genos meets Saitama, naturally Genos wants to find out how to become as strong as Saitama. This leads to a pretty interesting dynamic in the show. Whenever Genos fights, his fights are flashy, and his opponents often put up a good fight because they're all on equal footing. Whenever Saitama fights, he's so overpowered that his fights end in a couple of seconds. So technically speaking, Genos should be the more interesting character. The problem though is that there are plenty of other shows and comics that have characters like Genos. The idea of a character wanting to get stronger is nothing new, as evidenced by the fact that I already discussed that idea in this video. And the idea of a character trying his or her best only to lose is a fun and engaging idea, but it's also nothing new. The idea that makes this interesting is the fact that a cyborg character that can shoot fire out of his hands is much more relatable than the human character who is just a hero for fun. Additionally, when Genos enters the picture, a new idea is thrown into the show. Whether the creator intended this to be a message or not, Genos being in the show demonstrates how it only takes one person to change your life. Genos looks up to Saitama, and he gives Saitama the respect that he wants. Although it takes Saitama some time to get used to Genos, Genos is ultimately a plot point that allows for Saitama to start living a normal life. Without giving too much away, it is thanks to Genos that Saitama ultimately gets to do anything else in the show. As the show progresses, Saitama does meet a bunch of new and interesting characters, and he makes some friends, and he gains an objective, and that actually gives a purpose to the show. So Genos can be considered interesting because of his own goals, and he can be considered interesting because of how he changed Saitama's life. Saitama might have to save Genos time and time again, but in a way, Genos also saved Saitama's life. Genos would be nothing without Saitama, and Saitama would be nothing without Genos. It's a cool concept to think about if you watch the show with that thought process. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, you could still watch the show for its fun action sequences and humorous characters and fun dialogue, but it's nice to think that there are deeper meanings in some of the things that these characters say and do. And with all of that said, I haven't even really mentioned what the main plot point of the show is. Aside from Saitama and Genos fighting whatever threats come their way, Saitama soon realizes that people don't really know who he is. And even when people do know who he is, they don't like him. Saitama even gets confused for a terrorist at one point in the show. Saitama becomes upset by this, because all he wants to do is have fun by saving people. But instead, all of his heroism goes unnoticed, and people just don't like what he does. Now, Saitama is generally a humble guy. You do feel bad for him. He's not really that smart, but he's not really that dumb. He likes living a normal life, and he likes exercising, reading manga, eating noodles, and watching TV. And apparently, people don't like that. People think he's a liar, that he's a cheater, that he's a terrorist. Whether it's good guys or bad guys, people don't like Saitama. And to be honest, that general idea is surprisingly relatable. There are tons of people in this world who just want to do something out of passion and or for fun. But instead, society constantly bashes them and says, that's not okay. While these people may not face the same extremes that Saitama does, there are people who are often shunned by society, even though they might have done nothing wrong. There are people who have good intentions and make mistakes, and there are people who have good intentions and pay the price for a mistake that they didn't even make. In a weird way, One Punch Man is able to convey all of those ideas. It somehow shows how society reacts to things that aren't really problems. Another idea of the show was later introduced when Saitama and Genos try to become registered as nationwide heroes. I can't talk about this too much since it is a major plot point, but let's just say that even though Saitama is clearly stronger than Genos, Genos becomes the more respected and appreciated character of the two. Saitama is treated as a low-ranked newbie while Genos is treated as a professional. It's a creative dynamic to see. Saitama and Genos obviously know that Saitama is the stronger person of the duo, and yet, Saitama is considered to be significantly weaker than Genos. Everyone thinks he's a fake. Nobody could be that powerful, so Saitama is ranked at the bottom of the bureau, where Genos is ranked near the top of it. However, neither Saitama nor Genos really speak up about it, and neither of them are really ashamed about Saitama's unfortunate recognition, or lack thereof. Instead, Saitama just climbs his way up the ladder, showing how useful he can be. It really helps provide insight on the characters, and it's an interesting twist on the whole idea of a character that's just misunderstood. It's also a twist on the idea of judging a book by its cover. One Punch Man shows that even people that rank at the bottom of a list can easily make their way to the top. Some people really are just unfortunate and are categorized incorrectly, and as a result, a lot of people are quick to judge. As the story progresses, a lot of characters are introduced. To some, this may seem overwhelming, but since the characters are just so likable, many people would be quick to enjoy their presence. Some characters may only stick around for a quick scene, and others may stick around as a form of a secondary character in the show, and yet they'll all be equally interesting. The show even gets to the point where there are some characters that don't even physically appear, and yet you become invested in them. Whether the character is a hero or a villain, One Punch Man is full of very fun characters. There's the wise old guy, the tsundere, the overly gay guy, the vicious villain with the philosophical ideas, the high-strung guys, the guy with a cocky attitude with the power to back it up, the noble guy, yada yada yada, the list goes on. What's also great about the show is that these characters aren't just one-note characters either. Each character has a reason as to why he or she has these personalities. But One Punch Man also creatively has a way of showing that these characters are more complex without actually diving into them. Both the heroes and the villains have these long-winded explanations as to why they are the way they are, but the show satirizes that by having characters like Saitama simply say that he doesn't care. It's both humorous and convenient, and all of these characters show different emotions. These characters can be happy, they can be scared, they can feel sad, they can feel like they've let somebody down. Even some characters that initially feel like nobodies become some of the most respected and likable characters in the show. With all of these different characters, the fun comes out of seeing how these characters interact with one another. An idea that I love seeing in shows is how one character may face off against or work with another character. It's cool seeing how a hero and a villain might have to team up against a bigger threat. It's cool seeing how these two nobodies can work together and actually be somebody. It's cool seeing how someone of such a high rank can team up with somebody of such a low rank and accomplish a goal. So even though you know that Saitama can resolve a lot of these conflicts in a couple of seconds, the fun in the show comes out of seeing how these characters interact with one another, and how certain things will play out before and after Saitama gets involved. This is also where a lot of the show's humor comes from. Rather than trying to be loud and crazy, the show has more jokes that focus on dry humor and witty remarks rather than these characters obnoxiously screaming. Saitama is such an enjoyable character that meets so many other enjoyable characters that it's sometimes hard to say which characters are the most appealing. It's actually pretty impressive that there are so many characters that are so interesting. Even Saitama is fun. You like seeing him win, you like seeing him do things, you want to see him succeed. Every action of every character in the show somehow feels justified. Even though there are characters who might do actions that seem wrong, it just feels within that character's nature. So that's just a general overview of One Punch Man, and I'm sorry if certain things sounded vague, but I had to describe everything to the best of my abilities without using any spoilers. But the name of this video is How One Punch Man Saved Anime. So I guess that it's time for me to get into greater detail about the anime. A company known as Madhouse was in charge of production, and this is a well-known company that has many accomplishments underneath them. So needless to say, the animation is wonderful, the music is outstanding, the timing and action is superb, the voice acting is great, and the ideas that are conveyed in the webcomic and manga are beautifully translated over to the anime. It really is as if the manga came to life and was brilliantly animated. Rumor has it that the people that worked on the show were actually just really big fans of the original webcomic, so they supposedly had more interest and passion when working on the anime than on other shows. I find that to be extremely awesome, considering how the original author, one, simply worked on the webcomic out of his own passion, and the main character of One Punch Man is Saitama, who is a hero out of passion. And now there are animators working on the show, and they're working on it out of passion. So obviously, passion is a recurring element here, and I think that that is absolutely amazing. And yeah, I would even go as far as to say that when I was done watching the show, it really was the most fun that I had watching an animated production in 2015. It really is that good. But all in all, One Punch Man really is just a show made for entertainment. I could be looking too far into it, but I do think that the show does a great job at executing a ton of great ideas. One Punch Man never forgets that it's a cartoon. It really is just made for entertainment purposes, and it definitely exceeds in that department. Even without all of these deeper meanings that I tried to explain in this video, I'd still find the show incredibly interesting. Perhaps I've gone on too long about why the show is so good. It is just a fun anime with amazing fight scenes and beautiful animation and fun characters. So even if you don't want to look into it as much as I do, you can still enjoy it for its entertainment value. Animated television series, whether it's anime or not, always have high times and low times. But One Punch Man turned out to be a show that took anime in a very good direction. The show was so different that it brought people like myself into the whole anime watching scene. The show demonstrated that you can have 40 or 50 characters and they can all be interesting. You could have a very simple art style and still make something great. You can do something as a hobby and get very far with it. You can make greater projects if you put more effort into them. In a time when many other anime are following the same tropes and stereotypes as each other, One Punch Man is a show that just chooses to tell a story like it is. Many people, anime fans or not, are huge fans of the show, and I hope that the show is able to continue. So all in all, One Punch Man really just saved anime by having a passionate team work on a show that attracted a different audience. So if you like intense action and fun characters combined with creative ideas and thought-provoking concepts, then One Punch Man is definitely a show for you. Saitama is the main character, and he's just a hero for fun. In some ways, you could say that anime only needed one thing to be saved: a hero. Hey, thank you very much for watching this video. If you're new here, then please allow me to give you a quick rundown of things that you can do right now. I post new videos every single day at noon Pacific time. On the weekdays, I usually post walkthroughs and let's plays and all that good stuff. And on the weekends, I usually post online matches with friends and fans. However, I also create all sorts of other videos. If it's Nintendo, then I'll probably do something related to it. So, if you'd like to show me your support, you can click the like button on this video. Or you can leave a comment telling me what you think about the video, or you can leave a request. If you want to see more content from me, then please feel free to click the subscribe button to see all of my latest content. You can also follow me on Twitter. My tag is @RealYoSchiller, because Yoshiller was taken. Right now, there's also a bunch of videos on the screen. If you click one, you'll be redirected to a video or a playlist. Like I said, I create all sorts of Nintendo-related content, so chances are, if you watch this video, there's something that'll catch your interest. Once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys around in the future. Bye-bye, humans! Whoosh!